welcome back to chapter 5, and we've got Tally, our main character, there at the beginning. So, Tally knelt down to peer into the opening. She thrust her hands into the dark space and her fingers closed around. Rope and wood. "It's a rope ladder, Squill," she cried. A shiver ran down Tally's spine. "You hold the lamp." Squill wrapped his little arms around the base. "Now climb on my back. Hold on tight." The squirrel scrambled onto her back, clutching the lamp with one paw. Then Tally turned herself around and carefully reached out a foot for the start of the ladder. The rope creaked with her weight and the ladder swung from side to side, but she clung on. Step by step, Tally climbed down into the hole. Her heart was thumping wildly. "Mr. Bood wouldn't like it here, Squill," she said, trying to make her voice sound brave as the trapdoor squeaked closed above her. "There are cobwebs everywhere." The squirrel squeezed his paws into her shoulder to give her courage. It was damp and musty and it smelt like dogs rolling around in puddles, but they kept going down until eventually the ladder stopped. Tally reached out a foot and felt solid ground. She stepped off the ladder and took the lamp from Squill. They were in an enormous underground room. The air felt sharp, electrified. Trembling, she lifted the lamp higher and gasped. "Books! There were hundreds of books!" She cried out in joy. A library! An underground library! It was filled with the books from her dreams. How had she known they would be here? "Ma," she whispered. It was to do with Ma. She was sure. Had her mum told her? Her forehead creased as she tried to remember. Mr. Bear had come in here in a story, wearing one of his hats. "This must be why she brought me to the cliffs that day," she murmured, "to show me how to find this place." She looked at the squirrel. "Thank you, Squill. You brought me back to the giant stones." There were lamps dotted around the room. With a shaking hand, Tally pulled a box of matches out of her pinafore pocket and lit the lamps one by one. A glow filled the room. This was no ordinary library. There were no aisles and neat ordered rows. Here, shelves twisted and turned and corkscrewed from floor to ceiling. No shelf was level. Each seemed to curve into the next, so Tally could hardly tell where one shelf ended and another began. She looked up, and the ceiling narrowed to a tiny point high above her. Here and there were little wobbly ladders, which stretched up to reach the highest levels. The shelves were crowned with books of all shapes and sizes and colours. Some were bound in leather, some in gold. Some were tied with fading ribbon, some with a kind of twine. Their edges were worn and their spines cracked as if they'd been thumbed over and over again through the ages. "Oh, Squill," Tally clapped her hands. Her dreams had come true. She chose a book and blew the dust away to reveal a heavy leather-bound cover. It was very old. Tally could feel its spine was wrinkled and crumbly beneath her fingers. "The Map Book of Atlantis," she read. Her eyes widened. She chose another. "Designs for Stonehenge," and another. "The Second Book of Irish Dancing, How to Use the Arms." "Wow, Squill, these are lost books, secret books. Look, basic alchemy. That's how to make gold." She began to pull down more and more books, faster and faster. The Diary of Bigfoot, How to Find Lost Socks, The Secret to Younger Looking Skin, The Squirrel Map of Buried Nuts. Squill pricked up his ears. Tally could hardly speak. "Imagine, Squill," said Tally, "all these secret books here for centuries." Her fingers ran bump, bump, bump along the dusty spines. She chose a book at random. Spider Behaviour by Paddy Longlegs. Oh, Lord Mullet would love this book. She sat down in a corner to open it. "This chapter's called Spiderlings, Squill. It's about spider babies." Tally began to read out loud. "Some female spiders can lay over 1,000 eggs. The eggs are sticky and they glue themselves together." As Tally's voice echoed off the stone walls, the strangest thing happened. She'd always had a good imagination, and she'd always been able to picture the characters or place in a story. But now it was as though the spiders were really with her. They scuttled around in front of her on the dusty floor. Tally could see their markings clearly. and hear the rustle of their feet. She leapt up in shock. The book slammed closed and spiders disappeared. "Did you see them?" She could hear her voice shaking. The squirrel nodded and wagged his red tail. Tally sat back down. She breathed in and out slowly. With trembling fingers, she picked the book up. Gathering her courage, she began to read out loud again. "The mother spider builds a silken egg sac to protect her babies." Tally's mouth dropped open as the spiders reappeared. They danced before her eyes, making a bed of silk in mid-air and wrapping up their balls of eggs tightly. Tally hardly dared breathe as she watched them. They looked so real. She reached out and gingerly poked a spider. Her finger slipped right through the image. "It's some kind of hologram, Squill," she whispered. The squirrel nodded wisely, as if he knew what the word hologram meant. Tally continued reading. "After the eggs hatch, the spiderlings cut their way out of the silk sack," Tally read. "Look, Squill, they're so cute." Tiny baby spiders were rushing out of the fluffy white sack. They were brown and blotchy, and they ran about in circles. Then they pointed their spinnerets into the air. The wind pulls a thread of silk from the baby spider's spinneret. The thread lifts the baby, and the spiderling floats in the breeze, pulled by the thread for miles and miles. The tiny spiders were drifting through the sky. The air was cool and fresh, and Tally could feel the sun on her back as the spiders floated along. "Goodbye," she waved as they drifted away. Tally closed the book and gazed at Squill. "Do you know what this means?" she asked, her closest friend in the world. The squirrel shrugged his shoulders, as though to say, "No, but you're going to tell me anyway." Tally laughed and picked Squill up to hug him tightly. "The books are magic," she said as she gazed around the secret library. "They're magic, Squill." We are going to carry on reading this book for you over half term, so we will post the links to the remaining chapters so you can keep listening to them over half term.